Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report. And coming up on today's show, could the Silver and Black trade back with the Dallas Cowboys? A former NFL GM believes that the Dallas Cowboys could be interested in pick 13 for a certain player. Then, Darren Waller. You remember him? I know I do. The Silver and Black traded him away to the New York Giants, and could he potentially be contemplating retirement? That's all coming up here on today's show. If you don't know, I am now finding out that we are in an April sub-battle with our Bears channel, Bears Now, and we are down. And I actually didn't know about it. I found out today, which we're 9 days in. My point is, I want to make an electric comeback. I'm going to do this April sub-battle up through the NFL draft, and I want to make sure that we take down our Bears channel. So if you could, and if you hate losing like me, hit that subscribe button, send this to all your Raiders fans and say, you know what, you might not like Mitch, but I don't like to lose. Nobody likes to lose. Subscribe for Raiders videos. Subscribe so we don't lose our April sub-battle against Bears Now. So let's get in here to the latest going on around the Cowboys, this trade, and what a former NFL GM believes, could potentially happen, because I know that there's always a lot of speculation about what the NFL draft can bring. And we talk about all the time, could the Raiders trade up to go get a quarterback? Could the Raiders trade back? Think about how much we talked about in the previous years of the Silver and Black potentially trading back, right? We talk about it all the time. Then you got a team like the Dallas Cowboys where Jerry Jones, you never know what he's going to do. That's a cold, hard fact. But former NFL GM Rick Spielman thinks that the Dallas Cowboys should trade up to pick number 13. That way they are able to go out and get a left tackle to replace Tyron Smith. If you don't know, Tyron Smith ended up signing a deal with the New York Jets. The Cowboys are in this interesting spot right now where they don't know if they want to be able to go out and pay Dak Prescott. He's got 1 year left on his deal. And if you are Dallas and you want to be able to figure out what you're going to do with Prescott, don't you think that you should make sure that you have a legitimate left tackle there? I understand that, and I agree with that. And the Raiders were listed as the top trade-up destination for multiple reasons, but the player that was listed for the Cowboys, according to Spielman from CBS, was that Dallas apparently really likes Olu Fashanu. And I know that some of y'all are probably thinking, well, Mitch, Olu's an offensive tackle. Why wouldn't the Raiders take him at pick 13? I mean, would the Raiders take a left tackle? It's a question that needs to be had out there. I will say this. I know why the Raiders would trade back to number 24. The reasons are as follows. The only way under the sun that the Raiders are swapping pick 24 and pick 13, and obviously there's going to be a little bit more that you would get. To me, Jayden Daniels got to have already been taken. Michael Penix Jr. already have to be gone. If both of those quarterbacks are off the board, I could see the Raiders then sitting here going, all right, I could understand an idea of trading back and trying to accumulate some more picks. Could the Raiders stockpile more? Like Telesco has been a believer in years past that, hey, you got to be able to stockpile through the draft, build through the draft. We see NFL teams believe that all the time. Also, it could be a reason where maybe the Raiders are targeting another quarterback in the draft. Like, it's been reported that Telesco had some interest in Bo Nix. I'm very confident that Nix is going to be available at 24. I wouldn't take him there, but it could be a reason of why the Raiders would decide to trade back. I will say, I always say shame on people. If you're going to throw out a report, or if you're going to say, hey, the Cowboys could potentially trade up to 13 with the Raiders, I'll always say shame on people for not putting out a trade. So the trade that you're going to see is not a trade that I'm saying I would do. It's not a trade that I'm saying CBS reported. It's not a deal that Rick Spielman put together. This is simply based on the trade value chart of what the projected cost it would be for Dallas to go up to pick number 13. So the Cowboys get pick 13, and the Raiders' fourth-round pick 112. In return, the Raiders get pick 24, an extra second-round pick at 56, and then an extra third-round pick at 87. So if you're the Silver and Black, and if you have that much draft capital, I mean, your picks would be 24, 44, 56, and 87. That's 4 solid picks that you'd be able to build some pretty strong core players to your overall roster. So based on this projected trade cost, if the Cowboys wanted to go up to 13 to get a left tackle like Olu Fashanu, would you do it? Would you make this trade? And say yes, say no. This is going to be the pinned comment on today's show. Scroll on down, give me your answer, because my answer around whether or not the Raiders should make this trade is, to me, I'm going to try to play a little chess compared to checkers. I'm going to say no. I wouldn't make that trade. Do I think it's a good value deal for the Raiders based on the idea that Jayden Daniels and based on Michael Penix Jr. being gone? Yes. The way that I would look at it, though, is that I'd say, okay, Dallas, fair enough. Our top 2 quarterbacks that we wanted to draft, they're no longer available. If this is what you're going to do, I want an extra first-round pick in the 2025 NFL draft. That way I can use that extra draft pick. That way I can have an extra pick because I'm very confident the Raiders, let's face it, the Raiders aren't going to be picking very high in next year's draft. When I say that, they're not going to have a top 10 pick. So then if you can use Dallas's pick, and then you can use the Raiders' pick, then you might be able to go up and trade up for a quarterback. I'll also say the reason why I'm not going to do that other deal by Dallas is because if both Daniels and Penix are gone, there is not another quarterback that the Las Vegas Raiders should draft this year in the first 2 rounds. I'm not taking Bo Nix in the first 2 rounds. I'm not taking J.J. McCarthy, though. I think J.J. is gone early on. I'm not taking a Spencer Rattler. I'm not taking a Jordan Travis. There's not another quarterback that I am taking in the first 2 rounds of the NFL draft if I'm the Silver and Black. So what would I do? I would get that extra 2025 first-round pick, and I would start evaluating quarterbacks in next year's draft. I don't know who's going to be the top QB, and it changes year in and year out. But there's some pretty interesting names to this list. I mean, Carson Beck, Shedeur Sanders, Cameron Ward. I love me some Cameron Ward. Jalen Milroe, he got better and better and better. So if I was Las Vegas, I would say, okay, I'm going to roll with Aiden O'Connell, Gardner Minshew. I'm going to use that extra first-round pick, and then I'm going to go out and try to get my franchise guy in next year's draft. So coming up here, the trade that the Raiders should make with the Cowboys. If it's draft day, because this trade that we're even talking about, let's face it, it's only happening on draft day. The Raiders would never trade back with Dallas right now for the Cowboys to go up to pick 13, nor would the Cowboys do it right now. So the only way that this happens is on draft night. And if that's the deal that Dallas offered me, I'd say, cool, hang on, here's my counter offer. We'll get to that, and we'll talk about Darren Waller here in just a moment. But I do want to give a shout-out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks. And Mitch, there's no more NFL season. What do I do? Mitch, there's no more college basketball. What do I do? I'm going to show you all some golf picks today. Yeah, golf. That's coming from me. And if you want to get started with the #1 daily fantasy sports app out there, go to prizepicks.com/CLNS. Just make sure that you use code CLNS on top of that. But you can win up to 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000 with NBA, NHL, and MLB entry today on Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks, submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types are what make Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. So I'll be real with y'all. I'm not much of a golfer, but I asked one of our golfer people here at Chat Sports, and I said, make me some money, because quite frankly, I don't care what the sport is. If you're putting a little bit of money in my pocket, I'm all in. So Phil Mickelson, less than 2.5 birdie or better. And then Victor Hovland, give me the more on him. My Chat Sports guys have put money in my pocket before, and I bet that they're going to put some money in my pocket again. So if you want to go, prizepicks.com/CLNS. Prize Picks is simple. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 players, stat projections, and watch the winnings roll in. Get started now, if you haven't already, at prizepicks.com/CLNS and get a first-time deposit match of $100. Prizepicks.com/CLNX. Pick more, pick less. It's really that easy. Shout out to today's sponsor, and shout out to our Chat Sports team for, putting some extra money in my pocket, putting a little extra money in y'all's pocket as well. So the trade that I would ask for if I am the Las Vegas Raiders is as followed. I am going to ask for your first-round pick in next year's draft, okay? That's what I want. I want a first-round pick in next year's draft, and I'll also still give you a 4th-round pick. So, yes, you go from 24 to 13. I get it. To not have anything else in this year's draft would concern me a little bit. However, though, if we are able to get that 2025 first, and let's also face this, if the Cowboys, if they were to lose Dak, that might be a top 10 pick. If Dak plays the whole season, I'd say you're probably looking somewhere in the picks from 20 to 25 would be where if I was a betting man, where I guess it could be. So if you're the Las Vegas Raiders here, you'd have a potential to have 2 first-round picks that could help you then potentially, again, move up into the first round and go get your guy. Like, yeah, you don't have that fourth-round pick. It hurts. But the fact that Antonio Pierce and Tom Telesco just got hired, the other reason why I'd be confident in doing this is because, let's face it, they're not going to lose their job after year one. And if you know that you're not going to lose your job after year one and you want to keep that job security even for a little bit of extra longer, like if I was Telesco and AP, I'd be like, well, I just drafted my franchise quarterback in 2025. You got to let me see what he's got. It's an interesting timeline, no doubt. But the reason why I would do this trade is because the Raiders aren't going to have a top 16 pick in 2025. I'm confident to say that because this year the Raiders are picking 13. Quarterback play's not going to be worse. There's just no way that I could see Gardner Minshew and Aiden O'Connell being as bad as a rookie Aiden, Jimmy Garoppolo, Brian Hoyer. I also anticipate that this defense, now with Christian Wilkins, is going to take a step forward. So to me, the Raiders are going to be somewhere around that 8, 9, 10 win slot. That's where I project them to be based on what I know right now. That is not a top 16 pick. So if you told me right now the Raiders have pick 17, and then if the Cowboys have a healthy Dak Prescott, you're probably in the mid-20s, cool. If that goes down with that team, new defensive coordinator, like there's a lot of opportunity for the Raiders to have a much better pick than what a lot of people think. But 2 first-rounders helps you trade up for a franchise quarterback. And if you're trying to get a first-round pick now, which the Raiders have already called the Miami Dolphins and asking for an extra first-round pick, if you know they're trying to do it now, why wouldn't they try to do it again next year if you miss on Jayden Daniels and Michael Penix Jr.? Just something to think about. Coming up here, is Darren Waller retiring? The former Raiders tight end was traded to the New York Giants, and there was a lot, and I mean a lot of speculation around Waller potentially retiring, hell, even before the NFL draft. Before I get into the latest around that story, I do got to give a shout-out to our Bang Gang. Yesterday's show was insanity. That's the only one-word reaction I can give, and there was a lot of people that banged. There's a lot of people that were showing love on the stream. We had a hell of a time. So shout-out to Nabman, Rebel, Josh Melton, JC Does It, Common Raider, Mr. Zahn, Ira Jackson, Yoda Jenkins, Ed Robbins, who banged again today, Jamari Murray, Mr. Scheffler, Van Throek, all banged on yesterday's show, which has put me in a debt. And I have to pay my debt on Friday, and I might be able to have a few beers throughout the course of the week. But I know right now my debt is I owe 17 beer bongs by the end of Friday's show. Luckily, I'm going to have a little bit of help. We got a special guest coming in the studio on Friday. Graphic Raider will be here at Chat Sports, and he's going to be hanging out with Jeremy Chuggs and I, and we're going to be slamming some drinks, answering some questions. So if you enjoy our show, usually on Friday, basically going to be the exact same thing, a little bit more questions. Like I want a little bit more back and forth with all of us, and Graf's going to be here knocking back some drinks himself. So subscribe, tune in, and be ready to have some fun. 4 p.m. Eastern Time Friday with Graphic Raider. Let's get into the latest here around Darren Waller and is he retiring? If you don't know this story, Waller has been contemplating retirement from the National Football League due to the injuries that he's been dealing with since his time back with the Silver and Black. He's missed 19 games the past 3 seasons dealing with hamstring, SI joint problems, which is kind of going up the side of your hip. And the problem with this, or the interesting part of this, is Waller, to my knowledge, does have 3 years left on his deal. I do believe that the Giants gave him an extra void year, which lowered his overall salary cap last season. But, like, he was once the highest paid tight end in the National Football League. He was once a player that had over 100 catches. But if Waller's not committed, we already know that song and dance. He's not playing. And this is what Waller recently said about retirement. I have to make a decision at some point. You have to be 100% bought in for the grind, and I have to make sure I am bringing that to the table, or it's a disservice to the guys I am suiting up with. I also want to give the team time where whichever way I go, they can prepare for next season. So it's a little bit of a difficult decision, but here we are. The way that I would say this is if you're contemplating letting, it's basically like $20, $30 million go because you would rather retire, that to me already tells me that you're not 100% bought in. And to be quite frank, I don't think Darren Waller has been 100% bought in since he got that contract extension. That guy got paid, and we can call it what it is. He got lazy, he got out of shape, and he wanted to focus on other things. But what's interesting is this trade. And remember, when the Raiders made this trade, they got a 2023 third-round pick, which ended up being Trey Tucker at wide receiver. The Giants got Waller. I sat up here on the show, and I was like, man, I think that they could have gotten more. We'll see what ends up happening. Now, based on all these rumors, reports going on around Waller, and I think every Raider fan sitting here going, I'm not surprised that he's thinking about retiring, because I know as soon as I saw the report, I'm like, I'm not surprised at all. My take is the Raiders, you can now clearly say the Raiders won the Darren Waller trade. And I don't even think it's arguable at this point, because I don't see how anybody could argue for somebody that's willing to retire right now. Yeah, you got him for 1 year, but you didn't give up a third-round pick to get Darren Waller for 1 year. You gave up a third-round pick to have Darren Waller help Daniel Jones figure out if he's going to be the franchise quarterback or not. You still don't know if that's the case. So to me, the Raiders clearly won this deal. And if you're in agreement with me, which, believe me, I know not everybody that watches this show agrees with me. Hell, I don't want you to agree with me every time. That makes for very boring back and forth. It makes for a very boring conversation. But if you believe that the Las Vegas Raiders won the Darren Waller trade, hell, let's call it the Trey Tucker trade at this point, I want you to click that like button, because if you don't believe it at this point, I don't know. Maybe you're a closet Giants fan. Maybe you're a closet Saints fan. Or maybe you just don't like Trey Tucker. But it is clear to me that the Raiders won this deal. And you know what? I'm going to give you 5 reasons why they won this deal. The first one is Waller, since he got paid, has been unmotivated. And when you saw how great Waller was before his payday, I mean, he was one of my favorite Raiders. And I said it multiple times. He was one of my favorite players on this team because of his dedication and everything that he wanted to do. As soon as he got paid, all the injuries started popping up left and right. It was headaches. It was more about him being a headache off the field than what he was doing on the field. Because when he was on the field, there was at times where he was pretty damn good. The other thing was the injuries, they just started to pile up. He had a hammy. He had the SI joint problem. There was even some speculation from teammates being like, I don't know if he's given 110%. Usually when you're not staying in that tip-top shape, that's when the injuries start to creep up on you a little bit. And the injuries that he had where usually, and again, everything's different, the soft tissue injuries, when you start seeing players get that, it's usually due with poor conditioning or them not being in shape that they once previously were in. Another one is teammates did question his dedication. Like, that's been a very well-documented story. I can't tell you which personal Raiders player told me that they questioned his dedication, but I know this. If I told y'all which player questioned his dedication, every single Raiders fan watching the show would go, yep, I questioned his dedication as well. Then he got more focused on his rap career. I saw a picture it was a few days ago of Graf with like his headphones in a garbage can. And like when you think about the fact that Waller dropped a record the same night that the Raiders blew a 16-3 lead with 2 minutes left against the Rams on Thursday Night Football, like that light bulbs are just going off that he knows that people are going to be on social media, but yet he's still going to drop his rap album because he cares more about that rap album than he did winning football games. And then the other reason is this. Tucker is cheaper, and he's going to produce more. I am willing to bet each and every one of y'all that at the moment that deal went down, so 2023, you can count the 2023 stats, which I'm about to show you here in a second, and you can go from 2023 to the end of Waller's contract. So let's call it 2023 to 2027. I am going to sit up here, and I am guaranteeing you that Trey Tucker, during that time, is going to have better numbers, going to make a bigger impact for his football team, going to be less of a headache, and way cheaper. All of those reasons is why the Las Vegas Raiders won the Darren Waller trade, and I don't even think it's arguable at this point. I was a little bit concerned that if Waller was able to stay healthy, but then again, I sat up here on this show, I sat up on a Giants stream before, and I said, you're going to love Darren Waller during the offseason. Soon as it becomes the regular season, headache. What happened? Headache. Now we're in the offseason, and now he's even becoming another little bit of a headache. Darren Waller, sorry. Giants fans, sorry, you lost the trade. If you made it this far in the video and you want to give me a follow on social media, remember, I am at Mitchell Renz 365, literally everywhere. So if you're watching this live show, to the 750 people that are tuned in right now, pull up to me on social media. And remember, we go live every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. And if breaking news happens, I bet you we're going to be one of the first people live here on YouTube.